Rosalind touched.
Recording started.
Rosalind touched.
Recording started.
And then at the end, we'll have two boxes, one for people who want to see me and one for people who don't. So that way we'll still be able to get your evaluation. It's a little more efficient than just having two separate forms. So I just combine them. So ready to start. I'm pleased to welcome Dr. Jennifer Bloom to Rosalind Franklin University to talk about appreciative advising. She does have roots here in Illinois, and actually I want to thank Jim Whitmore for suggesting Dr. Bloom because apparently they have some academic relationships. Okay. Was that at Champaign-Urbana? Yeah, okay. So she works right now at the University of South Carolina, starting in 2007, but prior to that, she served as the Associate Dean for Student Affairs and Medical Scholar Program at the University of Illinois College of Medicine at Champaign, at Urbana-Champaign. I guess they've switched it around now. And my parents went to school there with the Champaign-Urbana campus. Now called Urbana-Champaign? Okay. She earned her doctorate in higher education administration from the University of Illinois at the Urbana-Champaign campus. So I'd like to welcome Dr. Bloom, and this is a participatory session, so you might have to move around your chairs a little bit, but I'll let her direct you.
Great, thank you. Good morning, everyone. So, Champaign-Urbana, that's how it's usually referred to, but the University of Illinois, I don't know, about 10, 15 years ago, switched over to the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. It used to be UIUC, and now they're just going by Illinois. So it kind of changes by the day how they refer to themselves. But I actually still have an appointment there in internal medicine. I'm an adjunct associate professor still at Illinois. So it's just great to be back in Illinois. And I'm still, when I'm out and about and I see Illinois plates, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's an Illinois plate. I'm like, okay, you're in Illinois. There's Illinois plates everywhere. In South Carolina, it's a big deal when I see an Illinois plate. So it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you to Z and everyone who arranged for my visit. So I'm going to be talking today about this topic of appreciative advising. So I have been a graduate advisor. I've been a full-time undergraduate advisor at Illinois. I was the advisor for the Institute of Aviation at Illinois. And while I was there, I got my doctorate, and then I went to the medical school. And I spent 12 years, and I started out coordinating the MD-PhD program there, kind of worked my way up to become the Associate Dean in charge of both the MD-PhD program as well as for the College of Medicine. So we're a branch campus in Urbana of the University of Illinois at Chicago, and along with Rockford and Peoria. And so I spent 12 years working there, and now I've come over to the faculty side where I'm at here at the University of South Carolina, where I'm teaching people how to go out and work at colleges and universities, and really enjoying that. And I'm really enjoying the weather, I have to tell you, especially if you've had this terrible winter. Really enjoyed the weather. So I always start out with acknowledgments because I wouldn't be here without lots of people who inspire me, and these are some of them. So that's my husband Steve up there, and he takes care of lots of stuff at home so I can be on the road as much as I am. And then I've got 4 grandchildren, and this is Cody at the bottom left, and he is at Parkland College in Champaign. He started out at Illinois and didn't do so well, to be honest with you. And now he's at Parkland College. He's kind of turned it all around. And then this is Caitlin, and Caitlin is a first-year student at Parkland. And, you know, this is the reason that I'm out and about, kind of teaching people how to take really good care of students, because I love these kids. I would do anything. I'm paying for them to go to school. I would do anything to help them be successful. And so if I have high expectations of the people at Parkland College and at Illinois of taking good care of them, you better darn well believe that every student that comes in to see me, I don't just look at them as another student, right? It's somebody's Cody, it's somebody's Caitlin. And I think when we start to look at students that way, it changes everything, right? So first question is, who's your Cody, who's your Caitlin? Who is it that you would do anything to help them be successful? Because again, if you can reframe the students that we're working with in that kind of light, I think it helps a lot. And then we've got Rachel and Ryan up there, and they live up in Midland, Michigan, and they're 10 and 8. So I run a master's degree program now, and so I have 100 master's degree students. My husband, Steve, is a pilot, and so this is our airplane, this is our hangar, and this is our house, and then this is the runway right here in our backyard. So it's kind of a fun place, and we're able to bring everybody out for orientation and our recruiting events and everything. But I love my students. They're going on and they're doing great things, working all across the country. So this is a quote from Joe White, who's the former president of the University of Illinois, and he says, "Education is the most powerful means for increasing individual opportunity and for creating a more prosperous, fair, and just society." So to have the privilege of participating in that mission is as much as anybody could hope for in life. And there's not a day that I don't wake up and think, goodness, you know, I get to go and I get to make a difference in people's lives and help them attain an education where they're going to go on and do great things. And we get paid to do that, and that's a pretty cool thing. So it's Monday morning. I hope you've had a great weekend. And I'm going to just show a quick 5-minute video because I think one of the keys we know to happiness is gratitude and being grateful for the opportunities that we have to do what we do. And so I want to just show this real quick video entitled Gratitude. It's about 5 minutes. There are lights. Turn down the lights. Oh, of course. Our audio person. Test this. There we go. We'll try this again.
Anybody know about this?
Here he is.
Oh, here he is. Sorry.
Okay, I'm going to just move on, and I'm going to have a break in a while, and then maybe we can fix it then for my other one. All right. So, if we could turn the lights back on, that would be great. Thank you. All right. So, this work comes out of the academic advising field. My career has been spent in academic advising. I'm a former president of the National Academic Advising Association. So I want to give you just a 2-second history of academic advising. 1972 ended up being a really important year in the history of advising because there were 2 seminal articles that came out. One was by Terry O'Banion. And Terry O'Banion said, look, I know a lot of you think that advising equals scheduling courses, registering for classes. But he said, you know, when I'm talking about advising, I'm not just talking about registering for classes. In fact, though, if you're going to be able to effectively schedule people for classes, you got to know a lot about them. You got to know what their life goals are, what their career goals are, before we start talking about majors or we start talking about which branch of medicine people are going to go into, and so on. And, you know, in particular with the health professions, like with medical school, there's not a whole lot of choice in terms of the first, second years of medical school. The curriculum is what the curriculum is. And so this part ends up being actually, I think, the most important because we know from the literature that having students feel like they belong someplace, the sense of belonging, the sense of like, these are my people, is so important. And the interactions that students have with us as faculty members and or administrators really can make all the difference. So we're going to talk about this part a lot because that's what you're dealing with. We're not so much worried about the fine-tuning of what classes people are going to take. This is a quote from me, and I find a little self-indulgent to quote myself, but I don't think enough people think of advising this way. And I say high-impact advisors realize that the positive outcomes of advising sessions aren't just limited to students. In fact, the real joy of advising occurs when advisors understand how fulfilling it is to really impact other people's lives and how much we can learn from our students. You know, and I certainly saw that all the time at the medical school when I was dealing with these MD, PhD students who were going off and doing amazing things, including starting NGOs and, you know, of course, literally saving people's lives. So we really are very lucky to do what we do. So what is appreciative advising? So appreciative advising is a framework. It's a theory to practice framework for delivering high quality services to students. And so it's the intentional collaborative practice of asking positive, open-ended questions that help students optimize their educational experiences and achieve their dreams, goals, and potentials. Right? This isn't just barely skating through their professional education. We really want them to make the most of the opportunities that the students have at a place like this. So even though this started out in advising, where I'm spending a lot of my time now is I'm talking to enrollment management people, financial aid, career services, really anything that has to do with students, this framework for delivering high-quality services is effective. And I'll tell you one of the things I'm most excited about right now is I'm working with one of my MD, PhD graduates that works at Mayo, and we're working on appreciative healing. And we're getting ready to give a talk at the National Mitochondrial Foundation conference this summer about how you can use this approach to work with patients in a healthcare setting. So I'm hoping I want you to kind of be looking about through, as I present today, about how you might be able to adapt this, not just in your work individually advising students, but this can also be used in teaching students as well as in a healthcare setting. So, does it work? The answer is yes. I wouldn't be here, I wouldn't be on the road all that I am if it didn't work. And these are just some of the institutions that are using this approach. Everything from the University of Michigan, their Ross School of Business is using this, from everything from admissions to financial aid to career counseling, you name it, they're using it. Everybody at the University of Michigan Ross School of Business has been through this training. Rollins College, Miami University, Tarrant County, University of North Carolina at Greensboro, etc. And this is just a partial list that keeps growing every day. I'm going to just show you a little bit of data. This is at the undergraduate level, so it's not as pertinent to you, but I just want to show you that this actually does work. At UNCG, this was one of the first schools that adopted this approach, and they were having issues with students who had been dropped from the institution. At UNCG, you have to sit out for at least a year when you've been dropped, and then you get to petition to come back. So these kids were petitioning to come back, saying, I promise I'm not going to make the same mistakes. And guess what? They were losing them left and right. So they said, we've been having really good luck with this appreciative advising approach. Let's run a pilot where the students who are returning off of dismissal have a chance to meet with an appreciative advisor 3 times the semester that they return. And this is what happened. 90% of those students were eligible to return the following semester versus 33% of those who did not meet with an appreciative advisor. And the GPA was a 2.86 versus a 1.29. Based on this data, they went to the UNCG Faculty Senate, and the Faculty Senate changed the rules so that everyone now has to meet with an appreciative advisor 3 times when they return. And it wasn't just a fluke, it wasn't just a focus group fluke. That number, retention rate has stayed at 90%, which is pretty high at the undergraduate level. We know the more people come in to meet with us, the better off that they are. These are students at the University of South Carolina who have been on probation. And, you know, let's say the more that we can get them in, the average GPA for people on probation is 1.32. We can get them up to a 2.53 if we can get them in 3 times. This is from Rollins College. Again, they kind of have instituted this across the institution. They've already seen that, you know, the number of students in good standing is going up and the students that are at academic risk is going down. So those are some of the examples of benefits to students. But one of the things I'm most excited about is that there's benefits to you, the people who do this. And I don't think anybody has really ever seen this in terms of academic advising, that there's actually something that accrues to you. So we had a woman who did her dissertation going around the country and talking to people who have adopted appreciative advising. And here's what she found. Those folks felt they were better able to use their own strengths, skills, and abilities. They were more effective in their relationships with students. They were able to build stronger relationships with students. But this one's the most exciting to me. In that, what I'm going to talk to you about today is a framework for building relationships no matter what the setting. And these folks felt that they were better parents, better spouses, better friends, better aunts, children, whatever their roles are. Because you know what, you can't change other people's behavior, you can only change your own behavior. So when you start to focus on what you can do better, it actually creates some of the change that we're trying to see in other people. So this work comes out of an organizational development theory called Appreciative Inquiry that was actually started in 1979 at Case Western Reserve University at their medical school. And David Cooper was a doctoral student there, and he found that when he noticed when he went into the hospital and he was talking to nurses and physicians, that the tone of the interviews that he was having totally depended on the types of questions that he was asking. Right, so when he was asking positive, open-ended questions, things really started to take off. It ended up being a very energizing conversation where when he was saying, tell me about the worst part of working here, things just went down into this downward spiral. And so he came up with 4 phases of appreciative inquiry. Discover, dream, design, and destiny. This is being used a lot in nursing programs to enhance the healthcare organization and the teamwork amongst the nurses. It's also being used at Indiana University School of Medicine. Across the entire School of Medicine, they're using this approach to run their School of Medicine. So what I did was I wrote an article about how you can adapt this framework for running an organization well to using it to enhance individual relationships with people, and ended up writing a book called the Appreciative Advising Revolution book. And when we did that, we added in 2 other phases beyond those initial 4 phases. One was disarm, and the other was the don't settle phase. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you just a quick overview of these 6 phases, and then for each of these phases, we're going to go into some more depth. This is a theory to practice framework with a heavy emphasis on the practice. So I want you to walk back to your offices and actually have tools that you can use. And we're going to be doing this throughout the morning, right? It's not going to be me lecturing at you. It's because the best way for us to learn, we know, is through active learning. So we'll be doing this. All right, first phase, the disarm phase. I'm sure you all are nice people, but students, they don't know that. They don't know that. They're actually quite intimidated by you. I know they were intimidated by me. I'm a really nice person, but I had position power. I was a dean student of the medical school, so I was scary. So I had to take steps to make myself accessible to people and less scary. So the disarm phase only takes a minute or 2. It's about creating a positive first impression where people feel welcome and at home. The next phase is the discover phase, and this is all about getting to know our students. Our students don't come here as blank slates. They come here with a lifetime of experiences, and we need to honor those experiences, and the way to do that is to ask them something about this. Now, this does not take long, okay, and I will demonstrate this to you today because we'll be doing this. But it only takes a couple of minutes if you're asking really good, high-quality questions. From there, the dream phase, and this is figuring out what it sounds like. What are the students' hopes and dreams for the future? Once we know that, then we can help co-create a plan for them to achieve that. And that's not just in terms of classes, that's the out-of-the-classroom experiences too. Right? Can they get involved in doing some research while they're in professional school? Can they do a study abroad type of opportunity? The deliver phase is all about the student going out and delivering on this, and you know and I know, students are not perfect. right? They are not perfect. They're going to make mistakes. And we want them to make those mistakes here so that when they graduate and go out and represent us, that they take the best care of patients that they possibly can. So the deliver phase is about helping them to learn from those mistakes and keep moving forward. And then the don't settle phase. My friend John Wright says that our job as leaders is to help people become better than what they think that they can become. And I'll say that again because I think it's really profound. Our job as leaders is to help people become better than what they think that they can become. And so this is not about lowering bars of expectation. Actually, it's about raising bars of expectations. I have very, very high standards for my students, but we also need to provide the support that they need to be able to reach those high standards. Okay, so here we go, the disarm phase. Let's start with this. This is from a Gallup poll that asked parents, your kid comes home with these grades, which grade deserves the most time and attention? What do you think 78% of parents said? The F, math. Oh, I am so disappointed in you. You are grounded. Go to your room. What were you doing? Oh, I don't even want to see you're grounded till you're 32, right? And what Marcus Buckingham says is that the answer to this F actually lies in the A's. And so he would say, look, we're not going to ignore this F, right? The F is there. We're going to handle it. We're just not going to start with that. Like, you got an A in English with Mrs. Potts. She's really tough. How did you do that? Right, well, I was having some problems in that language arts unit, and I went and I talked to her after school, and she really helped me. Yeah, excellent. That's a really good strategy, talking to the instructor. What happened in history? Because that's not an easy class either. Well, in history, we kind of formed some study groups. Oh, another good strategy. I didn't know what happened in that math class. You know, and it's, you know, what appreciative advising is about not punishing past behavior. We want to change future behavior. And I think by not putting people on the defensive right from the get-go, you just have a much better chance at coming up with a plan for not repeating those mistakes again. The disarm phase, the prerequisite here is that we just have to believe in every student that comes to our door, and that's not always easy. Right? Sometimes they kind of come well disguised as full of potential, but they do have potential, and that's our job, is try to unlock it. So, pre-appointment considerations. Before I go into this, I want to say that, you know what, you're probably doing a lot of the things that I'm going to be talking about. So I'm hoping that today will be really affirming. But just like for me, there's no day that I wake up and say, you know what, I'm pretty much the best advisor on the planet. Everybody come learn from me. I mean, I think this is the great thing about working with students, is that they keep you on your toes, right? Just when you think you have something figured out, they come in and like, what? You know? So just keep that in mind. Yes, I mean, I'm doing a lot of these things, but I can always do them better. All right, pre-appointment considerations. 1, your web presence. A lot of these students are looking you up before they come in to meet with you. What's on the web? Is there a picture of you? Are you like this in the picture? I mean, do I want to come and talk to you? Do you look like you're a nice person that actually is going to help me? Because they don't know that. Chair. So, you know, in our offices, we always have our chair that we sit in, and then we have our visitor's chair. When was the last time you sat in that visitor's chair? What are they looking at? Are they looking at the sun coming in and so they're having to squint? Are they looking at a hot mess of a bookcase? What are they looking at? You know, sitting in that chair. The other thing is I had somebody from the University of Southern California come to one of our institutes, and she said, Jenny, you know what? When I went back, I sat in that chair, and she said, I always felt people were a little stiff in my office, and when I sat in the chair, I realized that if you moved at all in the chair, that the chair would squeak. So people didn't want to move because they didn't want it to squeak. And so she said, all I had to do was switch that chair out, and it made all the difference. So I challenge you to go back to your office. See what people are seeing when they're sitting in that visitor's chair. How, you know, the layout of your office is important as much as possible. If, you know, if you don't have some kind of barrier between you and the student, I think that is an ideal type of thing. And then the waiting area. When I was at Illinois, I had a big office. I had a lot of people that reported to me. And it used to be that when someone came to see me, they'd call me and say, Jenny, your 9 o'clock's here. I'd say, great, send them on back. And so my receptionist, Judy, would say, okay, so you're going to go down this hallway. You're going to see 3 cubicles on the left, a water fountain on the right, and then Jenny is the second office to the left beyond that. And the student says, okay. And it's like, okay, water fountain, 1, 2. And then they're knocking on my door. Hi, I'm your 9 o'clock. Yeah, I'll be right with you. Right? I mean, what kind of reception is that? And one of my colleagues at Illinois, Carol Perkins, did a presentation, and she said instead of doing that, said, yo, come on, next person, she actually got up and she met people out in the waiting area and walked them into her office. And I thought, wow, that's pretty brilliant. I don't do that, but I'm going to go back and try it. Well, I did. And so Judy would call my 9 o'clock here. I'd walk out, greet the student. We'd walk back, engage in some small talk. And so by the time we got back to my office, the ice was broken. It made all the difference. It was night and day in terms of how that meeting started. Because number one, it showed the student that I respect you enough to come and meet you out there. Plus, if somebody else was also waiting for me, they could see me and they were like, oh, wow, she must be okay because she came out and she greeted that person. Seems pretty nice. Right? It gets it started, that appointment started off on the right foot. Now, South Carolina, I have no secretary, I have no staff that I'm responsible for, but I'm really careful that when somebody comes and knocks on my door directly and says, hey, Jenny, I just have a quick question, and I'm sitting there working on my computer, that I just put the computer away and engage, right? My job is not in that computer. My job is with that student that's standing right there in front of me. Those computers have a nice little save function. It'll wait. It'll wait. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about immediacy behaviors. This comes out of the teacher education literature. And here's the principle. People are drawn towards people and things that they like. Duh, right? That's not rocket science. And they move away from things that they don't like. And again, certainly the undergraduate literature is very clear that the more students feel connected to the institution, like somebody at the institution actually cares, the higher likelihood that they're going to be able to retain that student. And the same thing, I know, because from my experiences, happens at this kind of level, at the health professions schools. So what can you do? Verbal immediacy behaviors. First thing, calling students by name, the right name, right? You've done it, I've done it, where we've called somebody by the wrong name. I'm not good at remembering people's names, but I know if I say somebody's name early and often in a conversation, much better chance that I'm going to remember their name. Engaging in that small talk, right? That's a normal part of starting human interactions, is to engage in a little bit of small talk about the weather, about, just current events, what's happening. And I'm not talking about doing this for 30 minutes. You're busy, I'm busy. We don't have time to do 30 minutes. I'm talking about 30 seconds. Okay? I'm just breaking that ice. Giving students feedback, making clear what your expectations are, and also asking for their feedback. For example, I don't want people coming into my office and having their cell phone out. And so I think there's many ways that we can make that clear, including having a little sign that says no cell phones, like cell phone free zone. But also when somebody pulls out their phone, often I'll just stop. And that gets their attention, like, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, okay, no, go ahead. I mean, I'm going to wait until you're ready to talk to me. I mean, we can do that without being a total jerk about that. And then deciding how you want to be addressed. I prefer to be called Jenny. Everybody at Illinois called me Jenny, right? See? Everybody called me Jenny. When I moved to South Carolina, I couldn't pay people to call me Jenny, right? It's the South. It's Dr. Bloom, I've slowly gotten people to call me Jenny. But it doesn't matter. If I prefer to be called Dr. Bloom, that's how I would introduce myself. I think students don't often know what you prefer to be called by, so they're looking for an indicator from you. So I would say, hi, I'm Dr. Bloom, if that's what I prefer to be called by. Nonverbal immediacy behaviors, having warm, welcoming gestures instead of, come sit here. Kind of thing. People read a lot into your gestures, so please come on in. Local variety. Now, I can be boring. Hello, everybody. Today we're going to talk about appreciative advising. You know, but I love talking about this. It comes from my voice. I'm always cognizant of that when I'm meeting with students. I want them to see that I love what I do because I want them to love what they do. And then smiling. It takes less muscles to smile than it does to frown. And of course these, you know, gosh darn, our darn cell phones. I had a colleague at Illinois who, in his office, every time he got a new piece of email, this went off. He had the Three Stooges playing every time he got a new piece of spam. And it's like we'd be in there having these meetings, and it was like, okay, what were we talking about? What kind of message does that send? You know, even when you have your phone on vibrate, when you're meeting individually with somebody, they can hear it. They can hear it. And you know, they won't say, oh, well, go ahead if you need to take that. Are there times when you do need to do that? Of course, right? I mean, my dad was sick a lot of years, and so there were times when he was in the hospital and I needed to tell people up front, look, my dad's in the hospital right now, we're waiting, the doctor should be coming on rounds any minute now, and so I'm unfortunately going to have to take this phone call. And of course, people are more than happy to let you do that once you tell them that ahead of time. Eye contact. You want to have appropriate eye contact. You don't need to be staring somebody down so they feel like they're in a, you know, in a spotlight. But I know when I'm meeting individually with people, I have a tendency to look down or to look up. So I have to really focus on good eye contact when meeting individually. And then just basic counseling kinds of things like nodding, letting people know that you're engaged and listening to what they have to say. All right. What I want to do is I want to get everybody up over here. Let's go down here. You don't need to bring anything with you. Just come on down. Get you up and moving. Yeah, and we're not in a circle. You can just come and be. I'm always amazed when I go out. Everybody tends to go into a circle no matter how many times I say. I'd say our kindergarten teachers would be really proud of us because they taught us really well to get into a circle. See, it's happening. There we go. A brave person. Look at this. What a rebel. I love it. I love it. Wait till our next, he goes right into the circle. Look. See? Okay. So I'm going to give you a number of different scenarios. The only thing that you need to know is this signal. So when I raise my hand, you're going to raise your hand and be quiet, okay? So the first scenario is I want you to pretend that you're at like a cocktail party, meeting all kinds of new people for the first time. I want you to introduce yourself to as many people as you can until I raise my hand, and then you're going to raise your hand and be quiet. Go. Wow, look at you. You all went outside the circle. I'm so proud of you. All right. So the next scenario is I want you to pretend that you are at your high school reunion, seeing your best friends that you haven't seen in X number of years. Get to as many people as you can. Go. Okay. Oh my. I'm glad I didn't go to high school with you people. No. The next scenario is that I want you to act as if you are very suspicious of the person you're introducing yourself to. Go. So you right, okay. Some of you. All right, the last scenario is that you've just heard a rumor that the person you're introducing yourself to has won the lottery. Go. Okay. I love being back in Illinois. It's good to be back. Okay. So the whole point of that exercise is that we do introduce ourselves differently to different people in different situations, right? And what was the most awkward for you? Which scenario was the most awkward? The suspicious. You know what? You see that with students. Hi. Right? That kind of turning and looking down, that kind of thing. So as human beings, our normal reaction to that is to mirror the other person. And so it's really easy to go back with that suspicion to the student, and we want to actually have them mirror us. Right? No, I don't want to go like, ah! So good to see you, right? But that first impression, you know, means so much. The social psychology literature shows that we make a decision about whether somebody's nice, friendly, helpful, competent within the first 30 seconds of meeting them, and much of that literature shows that the first 3 seconds. So you just want to be aware of the importance of that first impression. And we're all so busy. I know how busy we all are. But, you know, it's like, showtime, here we go. You know, somebody's here to see me. That's what I have to kind of say. Forget what was in that email. Let's go. Because I only get that chance to make a first impression once. So, all right, I'm going to give you about a 10-minute break here to go get some coffee and hit the restroom, and then we'll come back and we'll continue on from there. Thank you. The next one.
Well, this is on a PowerPoint, so our AV has to check that we have a link to the audio component.
No, it's embedded in here. I mean,
Yeah,
you can work online.
Yeah, I don't know why. That's what I told her.
Can you show it on your laptop then?
The problem we're having is
And you won't help the people online if you can't hear it anyway. Can you switch it?
I don't have a key to, I don't know why, because the volume for the PC is all the way up on the computer.
There's no volume coming out at all.
Oh, it's all the way up.
What if we just play it on your computer with your microphone next to it? Could you do that? You still don't have a key on?
No, we're working on it.
Can I ask you a question here? In your first intervention, how is
Right, right. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I threw the box there. I don't.
Yeah. I don't know. I have to switch to a different computer when we do it, but yeah. I don't know what the... Okay. So, we will resume. So you had a question, yeah, you wanted to ask about.
In terms of that initial encounter, there was definitely the power differential between you and the student.
No doubt.
Even if you're suspicious, things come out differently. So can you address that?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you're suspicious back, again, I think it reinforces the suspicion, and especially when there's this power differential. But you know, again, I was like, oh, I'm really nice. People can, you know, it should be just fine. It's not. It's like I had to take that time to establish that with every student, and it's like you think at some point, gosh, can't my just reputation like precede me and make this a little bit easier? But the reality is no, and I think the disarm phase is in particular important for the first meeting, but I found it's important for every meeting. So if Z and I met the first time and we had a really good conversation, and the next time that he comes in, I'm like, yeah, what do you want? All the good that came from that first meeting, he's going to totally forget that. Right? And think, okay, like, I don't know what I did wrong, but obviously something. So I think this is a continuing thing. I want to say that for all 6 of these phases, you aren't necessarily going to go through all 6 of these phases, but I personally believe that this first one, you have to disarm every single time. Because if you don't, you've lost it. You've totally lost it. So, is that... Any other questions, or how do you disarm? How do you I mean, things like how do you have your office decorated? You know, is there any sign that you have a life outside this place? You have Winnie the Pooh everywhere, yay! Yeah. Yeah, and you're a real human being at that point. And the things to play with, I think, is a really good idea, especially for your ADHD students who need to be doing something. If they're nervous coming in to talk to you, and if they can have a little squeeze ball or something, it really helps them to kind of stay focused. What other things? Yes. Yes. Yeah. You know, I'm known for M&Ms. You know, like in my office at Illinois, I had this thing of M&Ms out on my table, and students would come by. I'm just here just to grab a couple of M&Ms, and 20 minutes later, there really was something, but it was like their convenient excuse to be able to come and get the M&Ms. Yes. Did you have something too? Oh, do you? Bless you. Yes. Perfect. I have a treadmill desk at home, and so I love my treadmill desk, and I think we're going to see more and more of it. And I think in the health professions, this is especially important, right? That we be good role models in terms of taking good care of ourselves. So I think that's brilliant. Yes. Anybody else? Yes. Yeah, so they can see. Which is a very real thing, in particular for our veteran students. I live in this neighborhood that has a lot of veterans, and most of the men, when we all go out on Thursday nights to this Mexican restaurant, and the men that are veterans always need to be able to see the exit. That's important to them. That's how they're trained, right? You never have your back to the door because you can get shot that way. So, yeah, what else? Wait. Mickey! Ah, he's got a Mickey Mouse watch. I love it. Right? Yeah, yes. Kind of with them instead of across from them. And not that there's not times probably that you might choose to be on the other side. You know, I was in charge of student discipline, so there were times where I would go and I would sit behind my formal desk. Most of the time I had another little kind of round table that I would go and sit with people, but there were times when that was, I think, appropriate, you know? Anything else? Do you have pictures of family? Yeah, I think that really helps. You know, it's like my mom was a 6th grade teacher, and we'd go to the grocery store, and we'd come around an end cap and go into the next aisle, and there'd be a kid there who would be like, just stop dead in his tracks, like, what are you doing here? You know, my mom's 6th graders thought that she slept at the school and she had no life, you know, so to see her with her family at a grocery store, it just didn't compute. But yet, we need this work-life balance thing that we all struggle with, right? Our students are super struggling with it. And so they need to see that we have lives outside of what we're doing, because we're important, you're important role models to them. Okay, so disarm. Disarm. It takes a minute, 2 minutes. I know you're busy, and this is the biggest concern I find with faculty members all across the country. I just want to say I understand that. And this doesn't take longer. It really doesn't, and I'm going to demonstrate that throughout today. I'll tell you, when I was at Illinois, I had 175 MD PhD students. We have one of the largest MD PhD programs in the country in Urbana. And then I had another 125 first-year medical students. So each spring, I would meet with every single MD PhD student and their graduate advisor together. And we had half-hour appointments. I'm doing that now as a faculty advisor. I have 100 students right now. I meet with all of my students every fall. Do I have time to do that? No. Do I make time to do that? Yes, I do, because I know that it has an impact. And the other thing is that I get a lot out of it. It's my favorite time of the year. You know, when you get to see these students and you get to hear their stories and you get to see what they want to do and you feel like you're really helping them, I think it's that intrinsic motivation is what really drives me with my advising. So, but I have half-hour appointments. And but can you do this in 20 minutes? Yes, you can. Okay. Can you do it in 5? No. Like you can disarm, yes, and you can answer a quick question, yes. But that's really about it. I would really encourage you to take more than 5 minutes, because I think you'll find it fulfilling, especially taking this approach. So the next phase is the discover phase. And this is the definition I like best: to identify a person as a potentially prominent performer. So I grew up in Champaign. My mom was a teacher, everyone in my family is a teacher. I was into sports. So when I was thinking about what do I want to be when I grow up, I thought I wanted to be a PE teacher. So I went to Illinois State, was a physical education teaching major who, when I was doing my student teaching, realized, uh-oh, this isn't what I want to do for the rest of my life. And I was very blessed because my next door neighbors growing up in Champaign were associate deans at Illinois. And they made an appointment to come see me, and they said, Jenny, we want you to come get your master's degree, and we want you to come work for Bob. I had no idea what I was going to do, so I said, okay, sure, that sounds good. And so I worked with the transition program at Illinois, which was for underrepresented students that came in with low ACT scores in high school ranks. And I knew the very first day that I met with a student that that is what I was going to be doing for the rest of my life, and that is what I've been doing for the rest of my life. And so those people, Bob and Elaine Copeland, literally changed my life, because here I go from thinking I'm a total loser because this thing that I thought I wanted to do my whole life, now I realize I don't want to do, no idea what I did want to do, and they saw potential in me. They gave me this opportunity, and I can't pay them back, but I can pay that forward. You wouldn't be here if there weren't lots of people who believed in you and wrote letters of recommendation and kicked you in the butt when you needed it. Because I know I've needed a kick in the butt every once in a while, right? You can't pay them back. You can pay that forward, and that's what I view this work as, is paying it forward, this belief that somebody saw in me, this little loser PE major who finished the degree but didn't do that. And they gave me an opening. They gave me a door to walk through, and I'm forever grateful. So what we often talk about in appreciative advising is the appreciative mindset. And the appreciative mindset is this: if you're looking for the worst in people, you will find the worst in people. But if you're looking for the best in people, you will find the best in people. But I'll tell you, it's a lot easier to look for the worst in people. We are so good at being judgmental of other people, yet we're really maybe even better at rationalizing our own behavior, because, well, we did that because of this terrible thing that happened and this terrible thing that happened, and woe is me. But we don't give other people that same benefit of the doubt. So we're going to ask questions. I'm going to give you examples of these questions, but we're going to listen, and we're going to listen for strengths, skills, passions when we're listening to their answers. So important behaviors here. Number one, sharing your story when appropriate and not for 30 minutes. Again, you don't have 30 minutes to tell your story. This isn't about you. But if you're dealing, for example, with a student who's struggling with organic, or some of those killer classes that people have to take, and you struggled with that when you were in a professional school, well, guess what? That's a great time to share that story, because when they're struggling, they feel like they're the only person at this entire institution that's struggling. They're not, but it feels very lonely. So when you, someone who has obviously accomplished a lot, and is on the faculty doing great stuff, when you share that, it's like, oh, okay, this isn't the end of the world. Right? I can recover. If they can recover, I can recover. Enjoying the silence. You can see the questions that we're going to ask are a little bit different. They're not necessarily used to being asked these kinds of questions. So it's like when you're teaching the first day, when you ask a question, and you have to wait for it, wait for it, wait for it, and finally someone will put their hand up. But if you go and you answer your question right away, guess what you're going to be doing all semester long, right? Answering your own questions. So it's the same kind of thing. You have to give them a little bit of time and space to be able to answer these questions. And then this valuing our differences, celebrating diversity. The thing I love about this approach is that it doesn't assume anything about anybody based on the color of their skin, their religion, their sexual orientation. Everybody has a unique story. And these questions will allow you to get at their unique story. As you're listening, saying, boy, I'm so impressed by the fact that even though your mother got diagnosed with breast cancer when you were a junior in high school, and you had to basically raise your two younger siblings and bring her back to health. Wow, those are, You had to learn all kinds of skills that are going to help you here, but also throughout your life. Really? Like what? Well, look, you learned how to lead. You learned how to organize. You learned how to prioritize. You learned how to manage people's schedules, right? Those are all skills that are going to help you be successful here. And then this authenticity piece is so important. You know, some people, look, go through today, please participate in what we're going to be doing. But if you end up thinking that this is just kind of fluff stuff, don't ask these kinds of questions. Because these questions demonstrate that you care just by the nature of the questions. And when you ask this question and then you're like, pulling out your phone, I think you do far more damage than just not asking the questions in the first place and giving them that glimmer of a hope that you actually care. Okay? So, yeah, authenticity. Okay, we're going to do a discover exercise, and what I'm going to ask you to do is to pair up with people. And these are the questions. I'm going to give you 2 minutes to be the question asker, and what you're going to do is you're going to pick one of these questions, you're going to ask your partner, and then you're going to listen. And then when your partner stops talking, I don't want you to go to the other question. I want you to use what Chip and Dan Heath call your insatiable curiosity, right? That you are so focused on this other person that you just have to know their story, okay? So you're going to ask follow-up questions. Again, you're just going to do this for 2 minutes. This is not like 2 years, okay? 2 minutes, and then I'm going to have you switch roles, and the question asker becomes the answerer. So if you could quickly pair up with someone, you can do somebody that's nearby. Oh, good. Somebody just come on in. Gotcha. Okay. If we can, maybe the 3 of you back there then could be together, that would be great. All right, I need to see 1 hand from each pair. Raise your hand, 1 from each pair. Okay, you're going to be the question asker first, and I will stop you at 2 minutes, and then I will have you switch. Don't switch until I have you stop. Ready, set, go. Okay, stop. So now you're going to switch roles. The other person is going to ask the questions. Go. Okay, stop. So, how many of you were inspired by your partner's story? Yeah. All right, so now I want to hear a story. I don't want to hear your story. I want to hear somebody brag about their partner. Who wants to brag about their partner? Yes. She tried to beat her to the punch. Okay. Yeah, very good. Yay. That's what it takes, right? I mean, somebody that cares. All right, who else wants to? Yes. Yeah, definitely, definitely, it is. It's, I mean, just really getting to impact people's lives every single day. How cool is that? I mean, that's what I love about the health professions is that you can see that, you know, that you're making a difference in people's lives. All right, anybody else? Yes. Yeah, yeah. My students are always in such a hurry to get out. You know, you see that with students, like, I can't wait. They're like, my students on Facebook are constantly saying, put a hood on me, because they can't wait till graduation. And I'm like, you know what, you're going to miss this stuff that we do. Like, you're going to miss the conversations. You're going to miss the people. And so that we get to be around that all the time, I think it's one of the great things about being a faculty member, right, is that you get to be around these young people and have these good conversations with them about important topics. All right, so look what you learned about your partner. I gave you 2 minutes. I mean, 2 minutes. And what you learned about your partner has a stickiness factor. Like, you're going to remember your partner's story the next time you see them walking around the hallway before you're going to remember most of what I talk about today, because stories have that stickiness factor. And it doesn't take longer to get to know somebody if you're asking a really good question, a positive, open-ended question. And it just gives you some insights into people that you wouldn't get from if you just said, so tell me, what are your strengths? Or what are you good at? You know, that becomes a list. So I'll give you another little thing. If you go out and interview, this is the key to interviewing well, is to tell stories, because it allows you to say that you're great without saying, you know what, I'm pretty great, you should hire me. You know, that doesn't work. So anyway, these stories, you'll remember them, and it will help you in terms of building this rapport in a not very long period of time. So these are some other kinds of questions that you can ask. There are no right or wrong discovered questions. I use different questions with different people. You're different than I am, and so I want to point you to a resource. So we're on appreciativeadvising.net, and you're going to see that there's a link to this Appreciative Advising Inventory. This is a free inventory that we developed, and it's great, and I'm not sure that it would be incredibly useful for you at the professional school level, but underneath that, if you scroll down, there's a chart that has a ton of Discover kinds of questions that you can look through, and you can pick and choose ones that just make sense to you. And so again, this isn't a dictation to you of what to do. We're all different in how we approach students. This is a framework for guiding your interactions, okay? And so there's lots of samples up there, and I would encourage you to go there and just play with this a little bit. Try some questions. And some of them are going to work, and some of them maybe aren't going to work as well as you had hoped, okay? And you just have to kind of find what works for you. Okay, so now I'm going to switch computers. I want to show you this video, and it's by Marcus Buckingham, and he's doing a lot of cool things with strengths. But he defines strengths different than how we normally define strengths in terms of like what you're good at. And I think this can be really helpful in terms of helping students figure out what it is that they want to do, because it kind of reframes strengths in a different way.
Isn't it funny how when you ask people to describe their weaknesses, they always manage to turn it around and make it sound like a strength? You know, the person says, my weakness is that I care too much. Or the girl says, my weakness is that I'm just too much of a perfectionist. It's kind of funny how we do that, but I suppose it's understandable because we want to make ourselves look as good as we can to everybody else, right? What's much less easy to understand, though, is that when you ask people to describe their strengths, I mean, the very things that would make them look really good to everybody else, they wind up being so vague, so vanilla, so bland in describing their strengths. And after a lifetime of interviewing people about their strengths, do you want to know the most common answer? Like if you were to bet money on what answer will I hear when I ask that person, this is the answer you'd make your money on. I like dealing with people. Yes, I do. People. No mention of which people, whether it's strangers or friends or colleagues or guests, it's just people. I like dealing with people. If you're going to get to be one of the 2 out of 10, that plays to their strengths most of the time, that takes control of their day, their hours, their minutes at work, then you've got to become good. You've got to get really good. You've got to get very detailed, very specific at describing your own strengths. I mean, I like dealing with people. What is that? Which people? What are you doing with the people? Are you selling to them? Are you serving them? Are you taking care of them? Are you responding to their needs? If you like selling to them, are you selling to a lot of different people during the course of a day? Do you really like getting to know people who are strangers, winning them over, getting them to like you, then selling to them, then moving on like a retail environment? Or do you like building a really long-term, established, authentic relationship with someone and only then try to persuade them to buy what you have to sell? Well, boy, those are 2 really different things. Or maybe you don't even like closing at all. You don't want to get a close. You just want to build influence. Well, which one of those applies to you? Or does neither apply to you? If you're going to get to be one of the 2 out of 10, you've got to get to that level of detail, that level of granularity in describing your strengths. The good news is, I mean, daunting though that sounds, the good news is that isn't actually as hard as it seems. You don't need a psychologist or a manager or a teacher or an HR department even to tell you what your strengths are. You can do this. Because your strengths have certain signs to them, certain sort of telltale signs. characteristics. And if you look back at your week, last week at work, and you try and look for those signs, you'll be able to filter them out, and I think be able to see from those signs what your true, most dominant, most powerful strengths are. Here's the first sign. And yeah, I mean, it's an obvious one, but pay attention to it. Your strengths have a yearning quality to them. They're like a force inside you trying to get out. So watch to see which activities last week did you look forward to doing. Which activities did you find yourself volunteering for? Now, there may not be that many of them because you did a lot of stuff last week. But see whether you can pull the curtain aside a wee bit and look for which were those activities you actually look forward to doing. Here's a second sign. Your strengths are those things you're naturally inquisitive about, right? When you start doing an activity that's around a strength of yours, you don't struggle to concentrate, do you? Your mind doesn't wander. You're like in the moment. You're in the zone. You're focused. You're concentrated. Time just sort of zips by, and you look up, and like a whole hour's gone by. Okay, what were those activities last week? Were there any activities that you stay inquisitive around, that you keep learning around, that you keep researching around? Those are all great signs of a strength. And then last, your strengths have this restorative quality to them, don't they? When you're done with them, you may be physically tired, but you're not psychologically drained. You're not empty. You're not depleted. You're actually uplifted. You're sustained. They fulfill you. That's actually why you want to do them again, because you want that feeling again. Okay, look for those activities. Were there any activities last week that left you feeling kind of magnificent? What were they? Look back for those three clues. Which activities did you look forward to? Which activities did you stay inquisitive around and in the moment? And which activities left you feeling strong and magnificent? Did you see anything? Really, try it. Just look back. Do you see anything emerging? Any activities? Any patterns there last week where you can see some of those signs? When I do that, three things come to mind for me. Three strengths sort of come to the fore. First, I interviewed a really good housekeeping supervisor. She's got 13 housekeepers she manages. She's brilliant at it. I love doing that, interviewing anybody who's really good at their job about why they're good. Second, I gave a presentation when I prepared. I'm not good, and I don't like giving presentations when I haven't. I need to know my stuff, get prepared. And if I've done that, then I kind of like giving a presentation. And then third, I read an article, took notes on an article about the New Zealand rugby team, which, would you believe, is, and always has been, the best rugby team in the world, which is kind of weird, because there's only 3 million people on those islands. There's more sheep than New Zealanders, and yet somehow they always wind up beating teams from countries 10 times their size. Love doing that, interviewing and studying and reading up on organizational excellence, particularly mysterious organizational excellence like that. Picking out activities like that, for me, is really important work, because those three activities, interviewing someone who's excellent at their job, giving a presentation when I'm prepared, and researching organizational success, those three things are strengths of mine. Now, in saying that, I'm not saying I'm good at them. I'm not bad at them, but I'm not great at them. I mean, with each of them, I have huge room to grow, huge improvement that's got to be made in each one of those. All I'm saying is those three activities, those three very specific activities, make me feel strong. And that's the best definition of a strength, for you as well as for me, for everybody. A strength is an activity that makes you feel strong. I mean, I know that's going to sound odd to you because you've been raised, like I've been raised, to believe that your strengths are things you're good at, your weaknesses are things you're bad at. And it's not like that definition's wrong, it's just not enough. A strength isn't just what you're good at. It's like the definition is incomplete, and it leaves out all the stuff that you really want to know about, all the really interesting stuff. You don't want to know what you're good at or what you're bad at. That's an outcome. It's happened. It's over. It's the past. You don't want to know about the past. You want to know about the future, don't you? I mean, you've got questions about the future. You want to know which strengths can you turn to when you've got a bad day so that they can build you back up. You want to know which strengths you can count on to really deliver for you regardless of the situation or the circumstances. You want to know which strengths you're going to get better and better and better at as you invest more training and time in them. You want to know which strengths you're going to be most creative in, have the better ideas in. Basically, you want to know which strengths are going to sustain you and fulfill you as you march on through life. And that old definition of a strength as stuff you're good at is just a really bad guide to those questions about the future. That definition tells you that in order to know how to plan your future and focus your future, you should look to those activities you're good at. But can that be true? But don't you have some activities you're good at, but which leave you empty or cold? Or they even actually deplete you? Like, you may be really good at organizing stuff, just brilliant at arranging everything, getting all perfectly in its place, but it leaves you empty. After 2 days of arranging and organizing, you feel this close to bursting into tears. Well, if you have some activity like that, should I tell you that organizing is your future? Organizing stuff is what you should build your career around? Of course I wouldn't. No, the best definition of a strength is an activity that leaves you feeling strong. Because if you think about it, I don't know what your goals are, I don't know what your dreams are, but surely one of the objectives of your life is to make the biggest contribution for the longest period of time. Well, if you're going to do that, whatever field you've chosen, if you're going to do that, you've got to base that contribution on activities themselves that strengthen you. Whatever you're doing at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday morning or 2 p.m. on a Thursday afternoon, whatever that is has got to strengthen you. The activity itself has got to do that. I don't care how cool your company is that you've joined, or how sexy your job title is, or how noble your sense of mission is. If the activity itself doesn't strengthen you, you've got a problem. We're gonna see you burn out way before we see the best of you. Now you flip that around. If you deliberately try and install in your working week activities that strengthen you, all kinds of good things happen for you. You'll find that you'll bounce back more quickly. You'll be more resilient when things set you back. You'll find you'll be able to stay focused longer. You'll find you'll be more creative. You'll find you'll set higher goals. And of course, the really relevant thing, you'll wind up achieving those goals more often. Why? Get your head around this. Because you will get good at things you practice. But you don't practice all activities uniformly, do you? You get drawn into some activities and repelled by others. And those you get drawn into, you practice more, and you practice more, and you get better and better at them. So you need to pay really close attention to your appetites, because your appetites, those activities you're drawn to that fulfill you, those appetites drive your abilities. You need to pay attention to how you feel while you're doing something, because how you feel while you're doing something will determine how good you get at that thing. And what about those activities that you're drawn to, but you just don't seem to get any better at? We've all got those, don't we? Activities that you have a lot of appetite for and seemingly no ability. Well, we have a word for those activities, don't we? We have a word for all appetite, no ability kind of activities. We call them hobbies. And they stay hobbies because no one's paying us to do them. I mean, I can have the luxury of still going around and hacking away with my golf swing, or the luxury of messing with my forehand, or singing gloriously in the shower. I don't have to worry that I have really no ability for them, because no one's paying me to do them. But it's amazing how quickly, when we go back into the real world, back into the world of work and wages and accountability and performance, it's amazing how quickly we dismiss that as a luxury. It's amazing how back in the real world, very few people maintain a strong appetite for an activity that they manifestly have no ability for. But you know the really brilliant news about defining a strength as an activity that makes you feel strong? Is that the person who's best qualified to identify your strengths, really the only person qualified to identify your strengths, is you. With the old definition, an activity you're good at, well, really the least qualified person to identify your strengths is you. Because you'd either be too hard on yourself or too generous with yourself, depending on how fragile your ego was. So right from a very early age, you were taught to look to somebody else, somebody outside of you, to confirm or deny what your strengths were. At school, you looked to your teachers, didn't you? At home, you looked to your parents. At work, you were taught to look to your manager and your HR department and that child of theirs, their performance appraisal. But with this new definition of a strength as an activity that makes you feel strong, you don't have to look to anyone else. You know better than anyone else does which activities you're drawn to and which repel you. You know which activities fascinate you and which bore you. You know which activities fulfill you and which leave you feeling cold. You know better than anyone else does if you feel fulfilled and excited meeting new people and winning them over and getting them to like you. If you say you love that, no one can say, no, you don't. They can say, you know what, there's better ways of doing that. They can say, here's a really nifty new way of networking with people. They can even say, hey, look, Marcus, you know what? Sometimes you'll need to get people to like you, and your ability to do that gets in the way of making a sale, or gets in the way of serving a customer, or some other such outcome. And that's okay. You should keep your mind open for feedback like that. That is totally legitimate performance feedback. But what no one can tell you better than you is which activities you love and which you loathe. No one can tell you which activities make you feel strong and which make you feel weak, which fascinate you and which bore you to tears. Here, your perspective is, and will always be, sure and true. So trust it. Look back at your activities last week. Look for those telltale signs of a strength. Reclaim them. No one knows them better than you.
We're not hearing the audio. Is the mic on?
Thank you. I turned it off for the video. Thank you. And then reminding students that there are more, that they have options. There's more than one right answer. One of the things that I've worked with a lot of minority pre-med students. You know, one of the issues that we have in MD, PhD programs is that we don't have a lot of underrepresented minority students wanting to pursue both of those. So I felt like I had an obligation to kind of grow my own at the University of Illinois. I had access to lots and lots of talented undergraduates, and so I created a class called Minority Issues in Medical Education, which was for freshmen at Illinois that were underrepresented minorities, and I brought in physicians. I brought in medical students that looked like them. I brought in the dean of the medical school. I brought in the director of admissions because I wanted them to know right from the beginning what a career in medicine actually looked like. It wasn't what they were seeing on ER or Grey's Anatomy, and to give them that real perspective. I ended up kind of being almost the de facto pre-med advisor for underrepresented minority students at Illinois, and part of it was that the pre-med advisor at that time was pretty quick to say, oh, you got a C or a D in Chemistry 101 your first semester, you're not going to make it. You're not going to make it. So, let's talk about what's your backup plan. What's your backup plan? Okay, so students, when you talk about the backup plan, they think, oh, well, you're just saying I can't do this, right? I always talk to students about parallel plans. Like, I don't know what I'm going to be doing 5 years from now. I don't know if I'm going to continue being a faculty member, go back into administration, or if I'm going to go be an independent consultant. I have no idea. But I'm setting myself up for all of those plans. I have parallel plans. I have options and choices, and I'm pursuing all of those things. And I think that's an important difference between the word, what's your backup plan, which they take as, oh, you don't think I can do this, and what are your parallel plans? What are the options that you're pursuing? So here's some dream kinds of questions. If salary, education, time are irrelevant, you could be anything that you wanted to be. What would that look like? When you were 8 years old, what did you, when your uncle asked you what do you want to be when you grow up, how did you answer? And how do you answer now? And if you keep getting, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know, this magazine question can be really powerful. A magazine question is, 10 years from now, you're on the cover of a magazine. What magazine is it, and why are you on the cover? Kind of a right brain kind of question. For young people today, there's a lot of pressure on them to be able to say, I'm going to be this, right? And that magazine question takes a little bit of some of that pressure off of them to just be open to this. I think we're really good at dreaming when we're little kids, but then about middle school is when we stop sharing our dreams. Why? Because I think it's because kids are really cruel in middle school, and they laugh at you, so you learn pretty quick not to share your dreams with other people. So doing this. So I want to give you a chance to do a little bit of dreaming, because I think as adults we don't dream very much. So I'm going to give you this opportunity. Can I give you some of these? To the back row for me, thank you. You notice what I'm doing here is I'm having you do each of these. I don't think you can be a really good appreciative advisor unless you've kind of thought about these things for yourself. There you go. Okay. So this is called Daring Dreams Delivered. And what I would like for you to do is under number 1. I'm going to give you 1 minute, only 1 minute, to write down what are your wildest and craziest dreams for your future. Do you want to be able to retire by a certain age? Do you want to go on an around-the-world cruise? Do you want to be able to send your kid to whatever college they want to go to? Do you want to learn a new language, get another degree? So write down as many as you can in 1 minute. Go. Okay, stop. Now, under number 2, I want you to pick one of those dreams and write it down. So my dream is to, keep in mind, I'm going to have you pair up with somebody different. You're going to be getting advice from somebody else. So just keep that in mind as you select your dream to get advice on. Okay, now what I'm going to have you do is I'm going to ask everybody to stand up. I want you to go to a different row, get a different partner, and then once you've gotten your partner, please sit down wherever you want. But move. All right. Once you get your partner, if you could sit down. Z. Nope, they got one. Here, Z's coming over. All right. And we can have a threesome. Z, can you add in one more there? Perfect. Okay. So here's how this works. One of you is going to share your dream first, and you're going to say, you're just going to basically read what you wrote on number 2. My dream is to, and then you're going to be quiet and you're going to write down all the great advice that your partner gives you under number 3. Okay? So partner, they're going to tell you the dream. What suggestions do you have for things that they should do in order to get closer to that dream becoming a reality? You'll see, you know how to do this. We do this all the time in life. And I'm only going to give you the 1 minute to get that advice. So again, the person who is sharing the dream, your job is to just write down the great advice that you get from your partner. So figure out who's going to go first. Okay, ready, go. Okay, stop. Now you're going to switch roles, and the other person is going to share their dream and get advice from the other partner. Go. Okay, stop. So now I want you to go down to number 4, and on your own sheet, okay, we're going to go through these together. Number 1, is the dream really yours? Yes, no, maybe. Does your dream benefit other people? Yes, no, maybe. How passionate are you about this dream? Number 10, your passion is so hot it sets other people on fire. To number 1, you would rather have a root canal without anesthesia. D, you know you're going to run into challenges and obstacles as you pursue this goal. What are 2 of those challenges that you anticipate that you may run into? Time, money are often a couple of those. And then E, you're going to list 2 people that you could enlist to help you get around those challenges. And then under F, 2 strategies that you could use. 2 strategies you could use when you face those challenges. Now, under number 5, F, what's one thing that you can commit to doing in the next week? So by a week from today, what's one thing that you could, one baby step that you could take? One little baby step closer. Now, once you've written it down, I want you to share with your partner, because this is called an accountability measure for a reason. A week from today, your partner is going to get in touch with you and see if you actually did it. Yes, it takes on a whole different level of meaning. Okay, so how many of you are more excited about your partner's dream than your own? often happens. I want to go through this list. This isn't just a haphazard kind of list of questions. There's research behind this. So, number 4, is the dream really yours? Of course, we know that if it's really yours, not mom, dad, somebody else wanting you to do this, putting pressure on you, that there's a greater chance that you'll actually follow through and do this. Does your dream benefit other people? If your dream benefits other people, the research shows that there's a better chance that you'll actually follow through on making it happen. Which kind of makes sense to some degree, right? That you would like, well, I can let myself down, but I'm not going to let this other person down. C, that's just a good kind of indicator to give you an idea of how committed they are to the thing. But this bottom part, D, E, and F, this is called what Heidi Halverson, who's written this really great book called Succeed, which is all about goal setting and goal achievement. If we can get people to think ahead of time about challenges that they may face and to think about strategies and or people that they could access when faced with that, the research shows that people will actually, there's a much greater chance that they'll actually use those people or use those strategies because they've thought about it ahead of time. Again, it kind of makes sense, but it's a small step that really can pay off quite handsomely if we get people to think about this. Part of this is the reality, of course, of our lives, that nothing ever goes smoothly and as we expect, right? There's always challenges in the way. And helping them to realize that they do have people and strategies that they can use is really important. Bless you. And of course, the accountability measure at the end, people kind of laughed, right? Because it took it to a whole different level. When you know somebody's actually going to check in with you in a week, much better chance that you're actually going to do it. So I think this is important with our students because, you know, often I'll say, okay, so I'm referring you over to financial aid, and I really want to hear from you. If I don't hear from you in about a week, I'm probably going to get in touch, and I'll make a little tickler on my Outlook schedule so that I remember to get in touch with that student. Those little things can really pay off for students. So, the Daring Dreams Delivered worksheet. Can you please thank your partner? I'm going to give you about a 5-minute break so that you can get back to your seats, get something to drink, and we will wrap up the last 3 phases from there. Did you get some good advice? There you go. See? Just like that. All was good. Turn this off. Yes. Yes. I know. You know, because I don't want distractions just in one time or out. Okay. So, we left off with the dream exercise I just want to show you what a couple of undergraduate institutions are doing to kind of get people, almost prompt them to start thinking about dreams, even in their waiting areas. So this is at Miami University in Ohio, their Hamilton campus. And that's a wishing well right there. And next to it, there's just a dream board and little sticky notes, and students get to put down what their dreams are for the future. Here's one that's at the University of Central Florida. And, go to medical school, be a mom, work for Pixar, work for NPR, meet Justin Bieber. Let's hope that dream has changed a little bit lately. But you would think, really, for undergrads, you might think, oh, well, they wouldn't want to do this. They have to clear this off every week because students are dying to put what their dreams are up there. Part of it is that they don't have to put their name, right? It's an anonymous kind of thing, but yet it kind of gets them thinking about what are my dreams for the future. Okay, so now we know the dream. We head into the design phase. This is often what people think of advising, just going right to design. So here, what classes do you need to take? Bam, bye. I think you can see we're taking the time to disarm them, to learn a little bit about them, find out what their hopes and dreams are. I think you can kind of help co-create a better plan. And that's the key here. Bandura talked about this. If people don't have any say in a plan, they often just don't have any investment in it. So we really do want to give them an opportunity to co-create that plan. Now, I did this with undergrads, but also with my medical students that are, in particular, thinking about really competitive specialties, like dermatology. And so instead of saying, okay, you need to be doing this, this, and this, and this in order to get a derm residency, let's say, okay, so what have you heard that it takes to get a derm residency slot? It's really quite interesting to hear what they have to say, because sometimes the word on the street is not so accurate. Sometimes it is. But then we can go back and forth, right? And we can talk about, okay, doing some research would be really helpful. Let's talk about what kinds of step 1 scores you're going to need. Let's talk about where you're going to be doing your away rotations. What kinds of rotations are you going to be doing? And we would, but the point of it is that we would go back and forth instead of me just saying, bam, 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 bam. So these are all the things that they have knowledge. They talk amongst themselves, as you know, and they often access. There's some really good resources out there on the internet and in other places. There's some really bad resources out there on the internet. But again, co-creating this plan. So coming up with an action plan with them, breaking down goals into manageable sub-goals. I don't know about you, but when my to-do list gets really long, it becomes almost paralyzing. Like, oh my God, I have so much stuff to do. And I've realized over time that I just need to focus on either the simplest thing or maybe the thing that's most time pressing, and focus in on one thing and get one thing done at a time. And of course we see this in the first year of medical school, talk about an overwhelming experience. And you can only take it one step at a time. Well, I've learned that over time. So helping other people to come up with, to break things down into more manageable sub-pieces, giving people deadlines, we respond well to deadlines. It's a whole other thing when I said, what are you going to do a week from today? Giving them a deadline helps, and then just making sure that we're being clear in what we're talking about. Because this curse of knowledge is a real thing. Right? This curse of knowledge is when we know something so well that we forget that mere mortal people have no clue what we're talking about. Medicine is well known for this. Higher education in general is well known for this. When I moved from Illinois to South Carolina, wow, they use a whole different set of acronyms down there. And they'd be talking about SPA and GARP, and I'd be like, I'm sorry, what's GARP, what's SPA? Don't worry about people like me. I'm going to stop you and say, I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. Can you explain that to me? I worry about the people who, when you said GARP in the first sentence and went on for another few minutes, they went off and said, GARP, wasn't that a movie in the 1980s? And they totally miss everything else that you're talking about. And I think that's a very real thing in a medical setting, no matter what area that you're in. So being aware that this is a different language that we speak, and giving good feedback to people. Say, oh, I'm so glad that you stopped and asked that question. Effective referrals. So this is a big issue. And I'm sure you all have seen this. I certainly saw this during my 12 years, the increase in particular at our medical school with mental health issues amongst our students. And they're scared to death. I'll tell you, medical students are scared to death to come talk to you about this because they are afraid that they're not going to get licensed. And we've got to address this because this is a real issue that they need help with. And the other thing is, we know that the suicide rate is really high in graduate school and in medical school. And unfortunately, I had one of my MD PhD students commit suicide when I was at Illinois, and it was the worst thing. It was just awful. So we have to really think this through. How can we effectively refer people to mental health? Because they need it. A lot of them need it, but they are scared to death to get that help. And I think it really helps. I know in my case, I really tried to form relationships with people at the counseling center so that I was specifically sending them to a person who had dealt with a number of our medical students that were running into issues and assure them that they're protected by patient confidentiality over at the counseling center. It was not part of the medical school. It was part of the entire institution. So how do you deal with that here in terms of mental? Is there a counseling center available? Do you run into this issue where people are scared to come and mention this to you because they may not get licensed? Okay. Right. Yes. Indeed. And they trust you enough to even talk about that. It's not easy to talk about those kinds of issues. Other thoughts of things, strategies that you've used to get people connected?
Someone suggested a mandatory verification between their options and the academic plan where someone might be failing always been a challenge and an ethical challenge and force them to
Right. Yes. 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 Again, this is another one of those things where I think when you're suffering from a mental health issue that you think you're the only one, you know. And so normalizing a little bit and just say, you know what, you're not the only one. There are a lot of people that are struggling with these issues. I've found to be an effective way to just, oh, okay. And just kind of see their shoulders like, ah. So it's a real issue, and I don't think it's probably one that we talk about enough in health profession schools. But there's a lot of pressure, of course, on our students to be successful. The other place that we need to do a better job of working hand in hand in, and maybe you do it here, but I'll tell you that's a pattern I see across the country, financial aid. financial aid. That's often the difference between them staying and leaving. And, you know, what happens with, I always say, with undergrads is somebody will say, you know, I'm having problems with my Pell Grant. And the advisor will say, oh, no, sorry, I don't do financial aid. You know, you've got to go see the financial aid people because I totally have no clue. Well, you know what? I have no clue about financial aid, but I know enough to help the student kind of talk through the kinds of questions that they may want to ask when they go to financial aid, because I really think that that's the scariest place for students to go to, is the financial aid office. They don't necessarily know what kinds of questions to ask. And so we'll just sit and say, okay, so tell me what you're up against. Let's talk about that. I probably am not going to know the answers, but we can write down the questions, because then when they go over to financial aid, they have a list of questions instead of, you know, them going over and they say, okay, so how can I help you? Say, I don't know, my advisor told me to come see you. I mean, that doesn't do any good at all. So sitting there and talking that through with them can be super, super helpful. Another thing that can be a helpful resource to students who are feeling lonely or not is this concept of having a personal presidential cabinet. And this is like a personal board of directors, in that if you'd asked me when I was 24, 25 years old if I had any mentors, I would have told you no, because when I thought of a mentor, I thought of an Uber mentor, like somebody who could advise me on my professional life, my personal life, whether I should get a doctorate, blah, blah, blah. And the reality is that there are no Uber mentors out there. The reality is that we go to different people for different things. So the president has his cabinet. You know, he's got a Secretary of Defense, Secretary of the Interior, etc. And he will go to the appropriate people, seek feedback. But the bottom line is that the buck stops with the president. So I want to get students in the habit of going and talking to a variety of people. And you know what? They're going to get some conflicting advice. That happens. And so they need to be able to sort through that, or they need to say, Jenny, when we talked, I thought I heard you say this, but was that correct? Because then when I talked to somebody else, they said it was this over here. Ah, okay, I see. You know, when we talked, I thought you were asking me this, and so that's how I answered, but I think what you may have done is switch that question around just slightly, and it makes a big difference in this particular case. Right? It's their responsibility to get that clarification. So this personal presidential cabinet gives them an opportunity to think about, in particular for your adult students, the kinds of resources that they have available to them. So the single mom who's going to school, working full-time, you know, trying to make a better life for her kids, who is it that she can call on to watch the kids if the kid gets sick at school? Or if the car breaks down, who can give her a ride? Who's a neighbor that maybe can give her a ride? Helping people to think about those kinds of resources that they have in their life can be super helpful. And especially for people who are feeling like really alone in the world, having them take the time to, number one, think about who's on their personal presidential cabinet and what do they go to that person for. So for example, for me, if I'm going to talk about a new idea about, for example, this appreciative healing, I'm working with one of my grads my MD PhD grads who's at Mayo Clinic, and then also one of my PhD grads who's done some stuff with appreciative advising, and we're working together. So I'm going to call them and say, hey, what do you think of this? If I need some HR advice, I'm going to go to my friend Ray Price at the University of Illinois. He's an HR guru, and I just trust his advice. If I need somebody to tell me that I'm great because I'm having a bad day, I'm going to call my mom, and my mom will be happy to tell me that I'm great, right? And sometimes you just need that. So this gives students an opportunity to think about who's on their personal presidential cabinet. So I'll give that to you just as a handy-dandy resource. So what are some design questions? What can you do in the next week to get one baby step closer to your goals? Basically what we did at the end of that dream exercise. Let's brainstorm on the resources you're going to need to achieve these goals, and how are you going to celebrate the accomplishment of these goals. This does not mean go out and get drunk, by the way. You know, it's about breaking things down into manageable chunks and, you know, taking a break, walking outside for a little bit before you go into the next thing, that kind of thing. Now, we've got the plan. The student has the plan. When I meet with students, and I've done this at every single level that I've worked, I take notes when we're meeting, and I've gone back now to using mimeograph paper. I've gone back to where I started back in 1990 with my advising. I used to make copies, but it just was taking too long. So I've gone back to mimeograph paper. And I will tell students at the beginning, and I have to do this, because if I don't, they're going to assume that I'm writing all kinds of terrible things about them. So I'll tell them, look, I'm going to take notes, and I'm going to give you a copy of them. So I'm not writing anything bad about you. It'll help me remember, and it'll help you remember what we talked about. So I'll write those things down while we're meeting, and then I give them a copy at the end. That way I have that documentation. They've got the documentation. People still like to be able to walk out with a piece of paper, I have found. As much as we are electronic these days, there's still, I think, something physical and tangible. So now, the deliver phase. This is when the student's going to go out and execute the plan that you've come up with together. So this is kind of towards the end of the appointment with the student. We're going to review what we talked about. Typically, I'll kind of go through the sheets of the notes that I've taken. I will remind students that I'm here and that I'm here to help. So come back and contact me if you run into any problems or you think your plans may be changing. Let me know. We'll come up with a new plan. And this encouragement piece, I'm reminded time and time again that life is really hard. There are lots of terrible things that are happening to people. Just in the time that I've been here, last night I had dinner with a colleague of mine who's a faculty member at Northern Illinois. His mom and his dad died within 2 weeks of each other. You know, talk about a blow. He lost one and then out of the blue lost the other. I have one of my PhD students who's at the University of Minnesota, been treated at Mayo for the last 2 years. They have not come up with a diagnosis until just on Friday, and it's Castleman's disease. And she's lost, I mean, it's just, there's a lot of hard things that happen in people's lives, and they need some encouragement, right? So, why is this important? Well, Noel Tichy's at Michigan, and he says, simply put, a leader's job is to energize others. Notice I don't say it's part of your job. It is your job. There is no time off when we're not responsible for energizing other people. Every interaction we have is either going to positively energize people or it's going to negatively energize or drain people. And there are plenty of people in the negative business. You know, they're just, those are a dime a dozen. The positive energy, I believe in you. You can do this. It's going to mean hard work, yes. But you can do this. We don't say that enough. I don't say that enough. I mean, I think this is one of those things where it would be difficult to do it too much. So ending the conversation, do you have any questions for me? Is there anything that I should have asked you? I really enjoyed our conversation today. I'm really excited about this plan that we came up with, and I really do want to hear when you go over and talk to the financial aid folks how that goes, because I probably need to know the answer to that question anyway. And then we escort them out just like we kind of escorted them into the office. As human beings, we remember first impressions and last impressions, so we want both of them to be positive. Now, as the dean of students at the medical school, of course, I was on the admissions committee for 12 years. I've denied admission to lots and lots of people, literally thousands. I've kicked people out of medical school. Our committee's made a decision, and I'm the lucky one that got to have that conversation with the people. I'm a big believer that we can uphold policy without being jerks about it. Like, it doesn't do me any good to pour salt on a wound that they've just been kicked out of medical school. Their life doesn't end. Again, I don't want their life to end. Let's come up with a plan about where we go from here. What are your options from here? And they have options, and we need to shift the focus to where do we go from here. So, deliver phase questions. How long are you going to keep me updated on your progress? Because I care. I want to know. what are you going to do if you run into roadblocks? Come back, come see me. And what are you going to do if you think your goals may be changing? Oftentimes people don't want to come back. Like you come up with this great plan to become a dermatologist, and now they have decided they want to be the pediatrician. They don't want to come back to you because they think that you're going to be mad at them for changing their mind. You know, it's like undergrads. 70% of undergrads change their majors. That's the norm. It shouldn't surprise us when people are changing majors. All right, the last phase is the don't settle phase. And if you look up settle, to move downward, sink, or descend, especially gradually, not. You know, Vincent Cinto does a lot of work with undergraduate student retention, and early warning programs are the in thing right now at the undergraduate level. But Vincent Cinto says the key to early warning programs, they have to be early. You know, you can't wait until the semester is 7/8 over to report to somebody that the student has missed more than half the classes. That's too late. You know, we need to get them early. This is what happens at South Carolina. I mean, I taught a University 101 class in the spring for people who failed it in the fall. And the average GPA coming in there was a 1.1. You know what happened almost every single time? They were doing just fine in the first semester, and then they got sick, so they missed a class, legitimately. And then they still weren't feeling so great. I'm not going to go. And then the next time it's like, oh my God, I've got a quiz. I'm not ready for it. I'm going to study though for real now, and then I'll make that up. And then they just stop going to all of their classes. No wonder they have a 1.1. You know, you can't succeed here, and you can't succeed as an undergrad if you're not going to any classes. So we got to stop that early. And really this is about raising bars of expectations. Jim Collins wrote the book Good to Great. You know, it's been on the bestseller list now for 13 years. And that book starts out with this sentence: good is the enemy of great. He says we don't have great schools principally because we have good schools. Few people attain great lives in large part because it's so darn easy to settle for a good life. So what can we do? Well, George Koo is at Indiana University, and he does a lot of work with undergraduate student retention. And what he found out is that at places, at institutions that do a better than expected job of retaining students based on their entering student demographics, right? For example, Harvard, it has a different student body than Illinois State does. Okay? Based on those entering student demographics, the students, the institutions that really are succeeding embody this positive restlessness. We're doing really good things here, but we can do better. I mean, we have to do better. We have this one really great program going on in the PA school. I wonder if we might be able to adapt that and use that over at the medical school or at the podiatry school. You know, and I love this interconnectedness between your faculty and your students, because I'm hoping that you're being able to, you have opportunities to share great ideas with each other. Because that's, I think, a real key, and that's certainly what Q found. And then a pocket of greatness. So this comes from Jim Collins. Because sometimes people say, you know what, I take really good care of students in my office, but then when I send them to somebody else or across campus to the financial aid office, they're actually kind of rude to them over there, so I kind of almost feel like I'm setting them up to be disappointed over there. And Collins would say, don't worry about what happens over there. Worry about what happens in your office. The only thing you have control over is what happens in your office. Create a pocket of greatness in your office. It spreads. It spreads. This is what we have found at school after school after school that's doing this. A pocket of people decide, this is this appreciative advising stuff. This is what we want to do. They do it. And the word gets out, and they can see that the people, you know, their colleagues see that they're happier and they're really enjoying their work. And so they're like, what was that? You said something appreciative something? It grows. It spreads. So key features here. 1960, Nevitt Stanford talked about this concept of challenge and support. We have to challenge students, but we also have to provide that level, the appropriate level of support. We want to have high expectations. You know, if you have too high of expectations, and I don't think there's any way that I can do it, I'm not even going to try. Why would I do that to myself? But if you set the bar really low, human nature says we kind of just do barely enough to get over that bar. And if my potential was here and the bar was here, you know, this can represent missed opportunity. So I think you just get better and better and better at setting that bar appropriately for different people once you've gotten to know them and built this kind of relationship. And really what we want is we want little success to build on little success and build on little success, and then you're graduating, going on and doing great things. So don't settle questions. You've done great so far. So this is often during like a follow-up appointment. You've done great so far. I'm really impressed with all the things that you've gotten done. But what's one thing that you could do even better? Or what would happen if I challenged you to become the best that you could possibly become? What would you need to do differently? Or if you were going to raise your own internal bar of expectations, what does that look like? So these are the 6 phases of appreciative advising. Disarm, discover, dream, design, deliver, and don't settle. And I'm going to end with this quote from Nancy Twist, who was a scholarship advisor at Kansas State. And she says, most of us will not find answers to the causes of cancer. Well, maybe some of you will. Or solve the problems of homelessness or diffuse international conflicts. But we feel that through our advising, we may be able to make a small but pivotal contribution to our students' ultimate work. It seems to me that our students represent an unequivocal reply to Margaret Mead when she famously said, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed people can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. So that's my charge to you, is go back to your offices this afternoon and do what you're doing, which is you're really changing the world through the work that you're doing in terms of training these people to go out and do great things. So I've got video. This was the first video that I was going to show you. This is the second one. It's called Trombone Player Wanted. These are some of the resources I discussed. The Heath brothers, as well as Heidi Halverson's book on goal setting and goal attainment, so you've got that. We got a ton of stuff on appreciativeadvising.net, lots of resources. We've got a Facebook group. If you friend me, I promise I won't reject you on Facebook. I'm on there. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm everywhere. And we have an Appreciative Education listserv. If you'd like to be added to that, I'd be delighted to take your card and add you in. So if you want to leave your card maybe up on that stand there, I'd be delighted to add you in. We've got a bunch of resources available, Appreciative Advising Revolution. In fact, we just had a new training workbook that just came out. This is a book about undergraduate student persistence. This is a book about how you can use this to teach, in particular University 101, freshman year seminar types of courses. We're certifying people as appreciative advisors. We're doing lots of stuff, certifying people as appreciative advisors. And there's an education component to it. We have an online class. We have like 175 people in it this spring. We've been doing this for 2 or 3 years now, and literally we've had probably 2,000 people go through it at this point. So it's an 8-week course, continuing education unit course, and then we put on an institute each summer. And this year it's going to be in Louisville, Kentucky, and it's 3 days. It's all hands-on, very little lecture, all small group, kind of living out these phases. So with that, I want to open it up to questions, comments, anything. Yes? Yeah. Yeah, so those sessions at UNCG for the students who had been dismissed, right, they had to commit to doing 3 sessions kind of throughout the semester, so early, middle, kind of late. They had a contract that the students had to sign and agree to in terms of specific expectations. That was kind of co-developed, though, with the student. They came up with goals. And the length of those appointments, I believe, is about 45 minutes for those particular students. Okay, so this is a pretty small subset of the student population that they were dealing with. So we have a similar thing at South Carolina. We have what's called this ACE coaching. It's an academic coaching program for students who are on probation. And in particular, we have an agreement with the financial aid office for students who are on financial aid probation. Those students have to come and meet with an ACE coach 3 times. And as part of that, there is an academic plan that the coach and the student fill out together. And if you just go Google USC ACE Academic Plan, I think it's based on these 6 phases, and it's easily adaptable. And we encourage people to look at that and adapt. And again, for a smaller group of your at-risk students, that could be a really nice way of doing this. And we use graduate students to be the coaches for the most part. I think you could also use peers, though. In your case, being at a graduate professional school, that you could train peers to do this and lead people through that academic plan. Because it almost kind of gives you a script, in essence, going through that plan together with them. Yes?
I wanted to ask about the documentation for the site.
Yes.
And the law thing you just decided to have students and then you have to write down, you have that.
Yes.
You have that sheet, but what is it that you're doing? Circle correct, in terms of confidentiality, who people, the spreadsheet, and the reasons that you don't.
Okay, so the question is about the documentation that I keep. Not a FERPA issue because it's only me that has access to it. I have a file for them, and they get a copy of it. So it's part of their academic file. The benefit is that my memory is not so great. I mean, I've got 100 students, and so I can, next year when they come in to meet with me, I'll look through what we talked about the previous year. I custom make it for my students. So, for example, when I was at Illinois with the MD PhD program, we had a template. And actually at Illinois, we had a secretary that sat in on those meetings with the student and the graduate advisor and took notes. And so she would then put them, we had them in an Access database, and then she would print them off, and I would edit them, and then it would be updated, and then we would send it to the student and to the graduate advisor so that we were all on the same page. So I do it differently now at South Carolina, where I don't have all those other people that are involved. And so I just did mimeograph thing, and I put it in. But the students at the MD PhD program knew that they would get those notes within a week. And if they had any questions or if they felt that there was some kind of inaccuracy in those notes, they could send it back to us and we would update it, and we would send it also to the graduate advisor to make sure that it's reflective of that. Yes. So they were MD PhD students. So name, who was at the meeting, these basic kinds of things, where they were at in terms of medical school and graduate school. So had they defended their proposal in graduate school? Had they finished the M1, M2? What was their plan for the next year? Were they going to do the M3, or were they going to do their 4th year of graduate school? So we had M3 or G4. Then we had just a summary of the kinds of topics that we discussed in the middle. Now, my one at South Carolina is a little bit different. I have some of the basic things about, who they are, where they went to undergrad, what areas of student affairs are they thinking about pursuing, and then plan. Basically a plan is the next section, and we talk about things that they need to be doing inside class and outside of class to position themselves to be, successful in the job market, because, boy, it's a 2-year program, which seems like this compared to having my MD PhD students for 8 to 10 years. So I think it's totally adaptable and based on your needs, and I've done it any number of ways, but those are 2 examples of how I've done that. Do you have an electronic system? Like we had one at Illinois. It was just an Access database, though. There are a number of institutions that have advising software programs where people can keep their notes. We don't within my office, so that's why I do it the old-fashioned way. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So asked about group advising. I think this can be done very well in group advising. In fact, I've had somebody write about that, about how you can use this approach to do group advising, because there's a lot to be said, because you can do some of these exercises that we did, right? And they give each other really good advice, like on that dream kind of thing. It increases that sense of, okay, I belong, and you form a relationship with the person that you're paired with. So I think it can be a very time-efficient way of doing things, covering a lot of information in a short amount of time. And I think there's a lot of benefit if you build in some of these exercises. And really, that's kind of why we wrote this training workbook, because we wanted to give people hands-on exercises that they can use to train other people and or to use it in an advising session. But I'd be happy to send you the link to the article about using appreciative advising in a group setting. I can send that to you and then forward that out. Can I ask you a question? So this appreciative healing that we're working on, can you see how this might be used in a clinical setting? So for example, disarm. Let's just go to a physician, okay? How a physician comes in, right? That comes into the office. If I'm looking at, okay, so you're here today, is very different than me coming in and engaging right away. Hello, how's your day going? What's the best thing that's happened to you so far today? That can be just a really quick way of doing a discover kind of question. Even just that. Can you see how this might be adaptable, or do you think I'm crazy? Yeah, right. Right, right. Right. Yes, because they often don't introduce themselves. Yes. I'm a real person. And indeed, that's what we're going to do at the National Mitochondrial Disease Foundation, is that we're going to teach them, for example, keeping a journal, coming into your meeting with the physician with a list of questions that you have, because it is intimidating to ask questions, and it's easy to get overwhelmed by all the technical knowledge, but giving kind of a template for doing that. So we're going to be, I think this can be a framework that can help both patients as well as members of the medical team. What was that? Right. Yes. And the other place that one of my MD PhD grads that I was with yesterday, he's a radiation oncologist, another place that he thought might be a good kind of place to bring this in is with nurse navigators, that in particular with oncology. So yes. Mm-hmm. It's going through the motions, like next, 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 yes. that's often, I mean, my dad had Parkinson's disease for many years, and he subsequently passed away. Yeah, that very much kind of is a motivator for me, because we had great medical care, and we also had not so great medical care, depending on the settings. And so it's very evident when you're a patient. And my friend Erin, who just got diagnosed with this Castleman's disease, has been going through this for 2 years. She's at Mayo Clinic, you know, one of the best places in the world. And yet there's such a discrepancy in terms of how people are treated in offices at the same place, you know. Sure, right. It's like chronic kinds of issues. Yeah, and Ramji was saying that he thought one thing, if we could make it in such a way that it would provide documentation for the meaningfulness of the treatment that's being prescribed, that you would have some documentation, for example, if the patients had a journal or something, and could talk about not just what has gone poorly since the last time. Like my mom, she had reports every time we went to meet with the neurologist about what had gone well since the last meeting. But then our neurologist kind of just used that as the template for how he conducted the appointment, and made sure that every single point that was an area of concern, but also yay, I'm so glad that medication change actually worked this time. You know, it just really helped to build that relationship, and it's so important in a disease like Parkinson's that is progressive, and it doesn't generally get better, but you're so, as a physician, you're so dependent on the patient giving you accurate information about when you're starting to feel bad. And if you're not giving that information, or you're too intimidated to give that information, it's an awful thing. Did you have something else that you're... Yes, you need to get exercise. Yes. Okay, this is really helpful. I mean, of course I'm kind of immersed in this. I haven't found any kind of human relationship that I can't make this framework fit. You know, as a parent, as any kind of relationship, just taking that 2 seconds it takes to warmly greet people, ask a question that's not just how are you doing, right? What's the best thing that's happened to you today? Something that's going to get you some kind of story really just goes a long way. And then being not so self-centered and thinking about what other people's hopes and asking them about that, and how can I help you get to where you're going, it's pretty cool. So, yes? Indeed, and this is it's like this academic coaching program. This is kind of the theoretical infrastructure behind the coaching program that we have at South Carolina. So whether you're calling it coaching, you're calling it advising, you're calling it career advising, what I love is that the framework, it's just important to have, I think, a theoretical framework behind what we do, and not just calling something and just kind of randomly doing something. And yet the framework allows you to be you, and you to be you, and you to do it slightly different. But you all then can have a common language, a common mindset, and you say, how do you disarm people when they come to meet with you? I think a lot of it between teams, and this institution is all about kind of this intercommunication, if you had a framework that kind of helped give you that language, a common language, I just think that that could be super powerful. So, all right. Thank you so much for giving up your Monday morning, for being here. I really enjoyed my time, and if you have any questions, if you want to follow up with me, if you've got any great ideas about this appreciative healing, whatever, my contact information is on that first slide. Please don't hesitate, including my cell phone number. Don't hesitate to contact me. So thank you.
Some of the content, so if you can go back to your office and there's a colleague there, and it's a short course.